Wonder why no one can.
I was gonna say, fairly small Zoom crowd so far. I guess we may be doing this one for Facebook attendees.
Because it says 0.
Yeah, that's unusual.
Got 14 on Facebook.
All right, so I guess we'll just go ahead and get started, and our Zoom attendees can get here when they get here. John, if you could check and make sure everything's working on that front, and we'll get going. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Gardening in the Panhandle Live. We are now in like our 7th session, so time flies when you're having fun. Today is sort of an open Q&A. We're just going to do some questions that you guys have asked about all different manner of topics. Wanted to give a shout out before we get going here to the rest of our schedule coming up. In 2 weeks, we have a session titled Gardening with Pollinators with special guest Dr. Gary Knox. So be sure to check that one out. And in 2 more weeks after that, on September the 10th, we have a session on fruit trees and shrubs. So that one will be interesting. I know many of you have a particular interest in growing your own fruit. So be sure to check those out. Today, we've got a good panel for you. We've got Evan Anderson, the horticulture and ag agent. Are you still the ag agent now over there in Walton County?
I'm now the horticulture agent.
Okay, gotcha. So y'all have just decided to let Mike handle all the ag responsibilities, I suppose, at the moment.
Well, I handle some of them still, so
Yeah.
gotcha. I can probably help you with.
Yeah, Evan's very good. We got Matt over in Washington County. Hey, Matt, how are you today? You're muted. Check that out. Mary Salinas over in County. Hey, Mary.
Hey, everybody.
And finally, last but certainly not least, Miss Beth Bowles.
Glad to be with you today.
Yeah, most of these are repeat customers with us, so we're happy to have this panel. And we're going to hop right into it. And so we're going to get started with Mary. Mary, this is our first question from Zoom. The asker wants to know, where do I find a good planting schedule?
That's a really good question because here in Northwest Florida, a lot of our timetables for gardening are going to be so much different than other parts of the country. You know, we have a lot of people who move here from more northern climates, and they're used to planting at certain times, and our timing is different most of the time. And even
Sure.
when people move from South Florida or Central Florida and come up here to the Panhandle, the timing can be different.
Like you've got a little experience with that, right?
Yes. So I started out gardening in Michigan, near Detroit, and that was
Similar climate to the Panhandle.
Yeah, that was very, very different from here. And then went to, Central Florida. And so coming up here, it's all different again. So I understand those differences. So when it comes to vegetable gardening, we have a really great resource, and that's the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. And the first table in the back has a list of the most common vegetables that you'll be growing and advice on when to plant them. And it's separated by North, Central, and South Florida. So you get very detailed advice on when to plant for North Florida. And it also has great information on different varieties and how to do vegetable gardening, fertilizing, and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, that's definitely a good resource. I was seeing if I don't have one on the table here on my desk, I've definitely got one close by. I refer to that pretty often. That's a good resource.
Yes, I think it's the most popular University of Florida IFAS publication that we have.
Is it? Yeah.
I know we always keep it in stock.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So of course, you know, I'm not sure what this person is asking about for planting, but there's...
I sort of interpret it as vegetable gardening, so I think you're along the right track here.
Okay, there's also a North Florida gardening calendar that is a really great IFAS publication. And that goes through on a month-by-month basis of what to plant when and what to do when, when to prune this or that, when to prune your deciduous fruit trees, when to plant certain things, when to divide your perennials. So I think that link is going up in the chat for you to look at as well.
That's a really good publication too. I always kept those in stock, or try to keep those in stock on our little publication shelf out front. And that's always one that has to be refilled on a pretty regular basis. It's popular.
Yes.
So that's good, Mary. Matt Orwatt is raising his hand right there. Let's see what he's got.
Yes, I just have one quick thing that you have to be careful with your fall, winter vegetables. Sometimes we have a hot September. So the planting guide says to plant them in September, but if it's really hot like last September, hold off until it cools down a little bit because they will fry.
The way this August is looking, we may be looking at another really hot September too. It has been pretty uncomfortable outside. So sort of related to the extreme heat that we're dealing with and that can sometimes persist into the fall, Beth, we got a question for you. Related to fruit trees, sort of an unusual fruit tree. A Zoom listener asked, when do pawpaw trees tend to lose their leaves?
That is an interesting question. Every year could be a little bit different as well.
Mm-hmm.
We know pawpaw is a wonderful native plant to the United States, and our colleague who's behind the scenes, Matt Lawler, wrote a really nice article on pawpaw that was in our Gardening in the Panhandle newsletter, so check that out. Now, here in our demonstration garden in Escambia County, we're really bad at always getting water, and pawpaw likes a little bit of moisture. So our leaves tend to drop a little bit earlier, kind of late summer, very early fall. But for most of you, you're looking at a leaf change with maybe some nice color on pawpaw, but that could be about mid-November, and some years even into December that leaves will drop. But remember, if we're really dry, like we were last year through September, it may be earlier.
Yeah. Over there in Escambia County, right there next to Baldwin County, one of the wettest places in the United States. So they have a little bit of a rain advantage over the rest of us. Anecdotally, I've grown pawpaw for 5 or 6 years. My experience is kind of like Beth's. In sort of a normal year, the leaves persist fairly long, and the fall colors, I mean, it's not a big tree, but it's nice. So highly encourage planting pawpaw if you want something a little bit different that fruit. So thank you, Beth. That's really good. Mary, we're going to just switch back to you real quick. We're going to stay on fruit trees too. So a Zoom listener wants to know, when is the best time to plant oranges?
You can plant orange trees anytime during the year, really. The most important thing is to make sure that it gets plenty of water while it's getting established. And I'm not sure if the listener's interested, but really good cold hardy variety for North Florida is the navel orange.
Mm-hmm.
Some other good citrus for North Florida is the Mineola Honeybell Tangelo or Sugarbell Tangelo.
Those are so good.
Yes. Oh, they are. And Sugarbell Tangelo seems to have some resistance to citrus greening, so that might be an advantage, especially down the road. Kumquats, Calamundan, and of course Satsuma. Many people grow Satsuma up here.
Yeah, hard to go wrong with that. So you're saying pretty much any time of the year that folks can irrigate it?
Yes, pretty much any time of the year you can plant them. What's really important though is to protect young citrus. Even if it is cold hardy, once it gets established, it can be vulnerable when it's young and new. So optimally, I would still plant it in maybe the early spring, so it has all year to get acclimated before any kind of possible frost or freeze occurs.
That's a good idea. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's good
for screening.
I'm sorry?
Have y'all experienced any citrus greening in Santa Rosa County?
No, I'm
Not yet.
not aware of any
Okay.
here. We do have citrus canker in
Gotcha.
Santa Rosa County in the southern part.
I know our friend Ray Baudry over in Gulf County has reported a fair amount of citrus greening in Port St. Joe. So that's hitting a little close to home for the rest of us here. So
Yes.
you may want to think about some of those varieties that have a little bit more resistance there. But that's really good. That's
Mary,
good, Mary.
what would you say about protection of those navels if you're not on the coast but further north in the Panhandle? When you plant, you got to what about strategy for that when you plant them?
Yes. So when you choose a spot, you want to optimally choose a spot that is a little bit higher in your landscape, because even in one person's landscape, there's little microclimates. So cold tends to sink. And so if you plant it in a little higher spot, it could stay a little warmer. Also, if it's protected from the northwest wind, so if it's maybe in on the south side, the east side of a building, or a row of trees or something like that, that gives it just a little bit of protection, that can make a big difference.
Yeah. Evan and I experienced that firsthand at the Walton County office. We planted some citrus back there, like you were talking about, Mary, right? We actually bought them in January. And we were not smart and did not wait to plant until it warmed up. We planted them when we bought them, and a couple of them were killed by a hard frost that year as young trees. But had they been had a chance to get a little older, they probably would have survived, you think?
Yes.
Gotcha. Awesome. Matt or what? We're going to switch gears to the ornamental world a little bit here. This is near and dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite plants out there. Our Zoom listener here wants to know, I planted some daylily plants, not bulbs, actual plants in a container in June. When should they bloom, and when is the time to fertilize these plants? So what do you think about our daylilies here? You're muted, so unmute there. You're muted, Matt.
Containerized plants still, the containerized
There we are.
have the bulb inside the pot, so they still are a bulb, so to speak. But
Yeah.
containerized, you can pretty much plant them any time of the year, which is great. Any time of the year is fine. However, if they're past the blooming season, you may have to wait until they bloom next year. So there are several kinds of daylilies. There are some that only have a short bloom cycle for maybe 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Then some can go for as long as maybe 2 months. Some of the new cultivars, 2-3 months. So it depends what you bought, how long it will bloom and when it will bloom. But in general, March through May is daylily season. And I would say in North Florida, I would say more April and May, sometimes into June. And so that would be when you're going to bloom. And fertilize would be late March would be time to fertilize, and again in June. And if they look deficient in September, you can fertilize them, but if they're not, then don't, if they don't have yellow deficient leaves. The key also with daylilies is once the clump is a few years old, it's good to divide them, helps rejuvenate the clump.
Right. You know, I've found some of these older plants tend to perform a little better, like the old-fashioned yellow and the old, what they call ditch lilies, the orange ones. They tend to bloom really nice and not need a lot of care. But some of those newer hybrids, while the bloom may be a little better, they're a little more prone to diseases. They're a little slower to get established. It's, you know, mileage may vary there. But you're
Definitely.
When did you say to fertilize?
I would fertilize right in late March.
Okay.
Way that it'll be available once they start producing flowers.
Yeah.
You don't want to fertilize, you know, wait till the last average frost date around March 23rd, and then you can go ahead. And I would do a combination of slow release and quick release.
Okay, really? What's a product that you might recommend?
Well, you know what I like? I'm kind of a holistic fertilizer. I like to use organic matter.
Yeah.
I like to use a slow release. So use, say, Pennington that has a blend of slow release and quick release, or just Osmocote if you want to splurge.
Okay.
And then I'll get some organic fertilizer blend that contains lots of different stuff, but the one I buy has alfalfa meal in it, but it also has bat guano and other stuff. Alfalfa meal contains a plant hormone that's that helps the plant produce more basal shoots. So you may get a little extra growth on the base. There's some research that demonstrates that. So
Interesting.
yeah.
So lots of organic matter, combination, quick release, slow release, and get it out
Yep.
in March before they start flowering.
Late March.
I think we can handle that. Good deal.
Yep.
Thanks, Matt. We're going to stay with you for a second. While we're talking about bulbs, let's just switch to a different bulb. This question asks, can I transplant my agapanthus? Some of you may know this plant is lily of the Nile. Can I transplant this fall to a location that receives full afternoon sun? So I assume they're either holding the plants in pots or they're already in the landscape in the shade. So can they move them to the sun?
Yes. Okay. So agapanthus in Florida, everything I've looked at says yes, they can grow in full sun. If you want them to look their best, a little bit of afternoon shade in the summer is recommended. However, it's not required.
Okay.
So you could grow them in full sun with afternoon sun and they can thrive, but you're going to have to make sure they get plenty of water and make sure that they have some mulch on them on the root, over the root system, make sure they're just kept in a very healthy state, and they still may show a little heat stress, but
Gotcha.
not too long, because in the spring and fall they're going to be beautiful regardless. So I think you can go ahead and do it.
Okay.
I think it should work.
Gotcha. So Beth and Mary, y'all are down near the coast. I know those plants are used real heavily near the coast. Do y'all have had a similar experience a little closer to the water?
I think it needs a break in the afternoon, especially as we get into mid to late summer. Just
Okay.
to do, well, some people we found a lot of homeowners water well, so they tend to do fine there. But, if you have a good sandy soil and it's going to drain real quickly, that little break will help quite a bit.
Yeah, so sort of
Exactly.
echoing what Matt said. They're drought tolerant if they're in the right place.
But you just have to, it's a microclimate, so it may work in some places and some not,
Yeah.
Give it a try. And, gardening is always, you can always try again. It's not like the end of the world if something doesn't work. So
Yeah.
you can always
So
do
that's right. My dad has had some of these plants for, now he's had the house for about 15 years. Plants probably been there for 10 or 12 years. Man, we got no flowers for the first few years. Is that normal, Beth? Matt?
Yeah, a lot of times, and that's like Matt's daylily question, when things first establish, they're putting that energy into establishment.
Yeah.
And we see it in the nursery and it's this beautiful plant with flowers, and then we transplant it, and where'd they go? It has to, build that energy to really put into flower. So it doesn't always work that you get quick flower for every single plant.
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right. Some of these bulbs just like to sit there for a little while and get acclimated. So very good. Yeah, to answer that question, I think Matt answered it. Yes, you can, but give it plenty of water, particularly in the summertime. Ideally, they'd want a little shade. So that's good. Thank you guys for that. We're going to transition a little bit and talk just sort of right plant, right place here. That's one of our favorite Florida-friendly principles. I'd argue maybe the most important. If you don't get that one right, you're going to struggle with some of the rest of them. So, Beth, we're going to ask a question here from Zoom. This is another interesting tree question. We're giving you these interesting trees. Can a ginkgo tree, sort of the oldest species, one of the oldest species growing on the planet, can these grow in Panama City Beach, PCB? And is there any location we can order larger trees for any species, not necessarily just ginkgo, in our Panhandle area?
So ginkgo is one of my favorite trees. Being from Tennessee, we had it all over. The campus had it lined, and this was the female ginkgo. They lined every sidewalk with it. So the fruit was very lovely to walk down the sidewalk. But for us down here on the coast, ginkgo is really not particularly for our zone. Ginkgo is really a little bit north of here that it's going to perform its best. So you'd kind of be taking a chance on trying to plant a ginkgo. I've seen a few here in Pensacola. One that does well down by Scenic Highway, which is, a little bit on the bay. But we had one in our garden that just struggled because it's just a little bit out of the zone and not adapted to our heat. So even though it's a wonderful tree, other places, probably not for ours. I would probably at Panama City Beach choose another tree.
Gotcha.
Now,
that's probably a good call.
Oh yeah, for nurseries, I'm going to get help from others who may be closer to Panama City for large trees. You know, over here in our area in Santa Rosa and Escambia, we have a wonderful nursery, Panhandle Growers, that has some large trees that you can work through your landscaper and things to get those. But if y'all would kind of help with some nurseries for large trees over more in the Panama City area.
Over here in Chipley, we have Maphis Tree Farm, and he can pretty much get anything you need. Let him know what you need, and he gets a lot of wholesale stuff from Monticello and around there. So if you want it, he can probably get it for you.
Yeah, I know in Panama City Beach, Lisenby Palms has a nice selection of things, and they work with Panhandle and a number of the other landscapers in Panama City and South Walton and around the coast and across the Panhandle work with Panhandle Growers pretty closely. And then, you know, if the tree doesn't come from them, it's most likely coming from Central Florida, North Central Florida somewhere. But I think that's good, Beth. But as far as the ginkgo goes, my experience has been pretty similar to yours. In that same landscape my folks have agapanthus in, they've got a ginkgo, and it's been there at least a decade, and it's maybe 10 feet tall, 8 feet tall. It's just not done much of anything, you know. And Evan can probably tell you, we've got, just anecdotally over in Walton County, there's a one homeowner in particular, Mr. Harrison. He's got actually a really pretty ginkgo, but it's very old, and that's the exception more than the rule, I think. Would that be correct, Beth?
It is the exception, you know.
Yeah.
You could have it because that fall color is so striking, and the structure is nice. That central leader and
Is that the tree with the bright yellow leaves?
Bright yellow. It is intensely bright, and I wish we could grow it. But, you know, really choose a plant, work with your nurseries to find one that's really for our area so that you know, have success, that you're not waiting 10 years to find out it's not the right tree.
That's probably a good call. Thanks, Beth. Matt, sort of sticking with the right tree here. What fruit trees are best for Zone 8B? You know, you get these clients come in, folks, you know, friends want to plant apples and raspberries and all these things. So what grows here as far as fruit trees? Keeping in mind Florida-friendly principles.
Keeping in mind Florida friendly. Okay. So I put a link with the dooryard fruit varieties, and that's pretty good. However, so anything in there that says North Florida, you can grow it here. You can grow it. You may grow it here. However, they're one of the best. So I'm going to say, what's the best one? Well, if you had to narrow it down to some that do better, I would say.
Yeah, 3 or 4 of your favorites.
Persimmon. Persimmon is really good, especially the non-astringent types. But even the astringent ones, you can pulp and make persimmon bread out of. They're pretty good. Blueberries, you can actually grow them into the rabbit eye varieties. You can grow them into tree form if you wish. They'll grow pretty tall, and they do very nice. But you can also get some dwarf blueberries like Darrow's blueberry and have it be part of an edible landscape. You can eat them and have it as a landscape. The Darrow eye blueberry. Mayhaw, if you have a low spot that gets wet, it does well. Yeah. The Satsuma, you know, the Satsuma and Kumquat, once they're established plants that you protected when they're young, they don't require a whole lot of protection when they get older. So
those cold hardy citrus Mary talked about earlier.
Cold hardy citrus, fig. If you have a soil that has good drainage but also good organic matter, sometimes figs sulk if the pH is too low.
Okay.
So a pH around 7. So you might have to add some lime, and organic matter. The hard pears, the ones that are resistant to fire blight, they're pretty good, and they can persist and do well in our area. And there are lots of other fruits like apples and peaches that can grow here, but
not easily,
you have
right?
to spray with insecticides and fungicides. Or if you're trying to grow some citrus like a tangerine, you can grow it, but you have to do or a lime, you may have to protect it a little more than, you know. So the easy stuff, that's more easy. Blackberries are not really trees, but you could grow them. They get a little fungal disease, but you could probably. What I recommend with blackberries, I had an experience with this. Let me tell you.
All right, let's hear it.
Tell you. Okay, I won't take too much of your time, but I had this bed that got overrun by those dewberry bramble things. Talking about, right, the bane of your existence when you're.
Yeah, those are pretty good to eat, though. I like those.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, because I had lost a bunch of climbing roses that were just bad for the area. they thrive. They hated the heat. And I just kind of let that area go, and I let these dewberries go up about knee high, and they produce some of the nicest, most tasty blackberries I've ever had in my life. I got a gallon out of them.
Wear your gloves when you
Before
harvest.
destroyed them. You know, I pulled them up after that and putting roses back there again, but they're gone now. But you know what? I was just like shocked at how good they were. So if you have those, just let them persist. Get a spot where they can grow, and you can leave them alone, and you can wear some good gloves. And you're going to have and they don't get diseases. This is marvelous. So
Yeah,
idea.
that is a good idea. I'll tell you, my one you did not mention that I'm appalled at, maybe my favorite, is loquat. Loquat is so good. You know, you don't see them in stores, and I don't know, I guess that maybe because the fruit doesn't store or ship very well. Is that, I see Evan shaking his head, is that correct?
I left off loquat because depending on if you're in the northern part of Panhandle, it might not fruit, but maybe once every 3 years because it gets too cold, it freezes the blossoms off. But if you're near the water, or if you shelter the plant, then you may be able to get it to produce every year.
Evan, you're pretty far north. Have you noticed that iffy fruit?
It's iffy. And I'd say, yeah, you don't see them in the stores because the storage life, just like a fig, it's not going to last any amount of time.
Okay.
We have a couple of trees out in front of our office. Beg pardon?
I said, man, they are tart, nice and tart and sweet, though.
They are. They're good.
And they make a nice landscape tree as well.
Yeah.
They're very attractive trees.
Yeah. But they must set fruit pretty earlier in the winter, and that's why sometimes the fruit won't persist. Okay.
Sometimes they'll flower in February, and this year we've had a good loquat year, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Last year would not have been because they had a late frost in March.
Okay. Well, that's good, Matt. You giving folks lots of options and sort of dissuaded folks. So if you see some of those weeds that are dewberries, you might want to leave one or two around and about. That's a good call. Evan, we got a question from Zoom. This is a pretty common one. Folks, especially around the coast or near a pond or something, suggestions for native plantings in a waterfront shady setting. So we're near the water, shade.
It really depends how far into the water you want the planting and what style of plant you want. So, you know, there's bushes, there's flowers, there's ground covers, there's grasses. There are a number of different options for either one. I would point you toward our Florida friendly plants. I've got a link here that we'll put into the chat box. So remember, if you're the links that we're talking about, check out our chat box. There is a Florida friendly plant database. You can go based on the amount of water in the soil, whether or not it's native. Off the top of my head, a few that are pretty good. You might try blue-eyed grass, which is not really a grass. It's more of a ground cover, and it's in the lily family, but makes a pretty little blue flower and does well near the water. Part shade. If you're looking for something a little taller, you might go for milkweed, Asclepias. Can handle a little bit of a damper climate. For shrubberies, I know that there's a lot of it out there and you might not be too interested in it, but Yopon holly does well near the water, and there are some ornamental varieties that you might find a little more palatable than your just pine woods Yopon.
Yeah. Not quite.
Again, check out that list so you can tailor it to your needs and find out what else is out there. Very good.
Those are good suggestions. So Evan, we're going to stay with you and also get to our friend Matt here. What are some plants that are beneficial to loosening hard clay soil? I'm going to let Matt go first, and then I know you have one in particular that you wanted to talk about. So Matt, tell us about some plants that you might be beneficial loosening if they have some hard compacted soil. You're muted again, Matthew.
I provided a really good document from Oregon State University.
Okay.
And it talks about adding organic matter. So I'm saying add dead plants, okay?
I gotcha.
Animal products. And you can work that into your soil. That helps loosen that clay, work that in. I think that's the best way to go, is use organic matter. There may be some other plants that do it, and Evan knows more about that than I do, so I'm going to defer to him.
That's good. So add organic matter is step 1, and then Evan, step 2, what might you do?
And of course, if you add organic matter, you do have to till it into the soil. You have to incorporate it, or it's just going to sit there on top of the clay and not do much at all, except
You created yourself a hard pan there.
exactly. And you might, anyway, in terms of plants that can break up some of the soil, one that folks use in agriculture a little bit is tillage radish, which is, I believe, a variety of the daikon that is a big, long, tall, crazy looking white radish that digs down deep in the soil and breaks it up. And as it decomposes, if you till it in, then you can get a lot of good organic matter in the soil that way. There are some others that can handle clay soils that may help to break it up, like crimson clover is a cool season forage that people use. You see it along the side of the highway, so it can do pretty well in marginal areas. Sunflowers can help to break up the soil. They have a nice taproot, and cowpeas are another cover that people will use sometimes as just to break it up a little bit.
Gotcha. So before you start gardening in an area, or before you make a landscape, you may want to let it go a year and add some organic matter and try some of these cover crops for a little while. Okay, very good. Mary, we've had a bunch of questions on this one, several. This is a super common topic, but it's important. What are some of the best natural pesticides to use in this area? Thinking organic, natural, thinking in those kind of terms, what can we use pesticide-wise?
And there are a lot more people these days asking for information on that. It's quite a popular topic.
For sure.
That we hear about these days. So, because people want to avoid damage to, collateral damage to beneficial insects and such. So they want to use something that is softer on the environment and our pollinators. So in the chat box, I think a publication link is going to go up there for natural products for managing landscape and garden pests in Florida. And it is really good in going through a lot of the good products that are out there. There's a lot of different oils that are available. They're either plant-based or petroleum-based. Some of the plant-based ones are neem oil. And then there's things like sesame oil and garlic oil and all kinds of things that are out there. Citrus oils. Boy, we just keep coming back to citrus.
We do. All roads lead back to citrus, apparently.
Yes. And then there's insecticidal soaps, and those are good. One caveat, when you talk about using soaps, is a lot of people tend to want to use their dish detergents.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of recipes out there on the internet about using, your dish detergents. The problem with that is that they're really good at cutting grease on your dishes and your skillets and such, but they also can damage the leaves because because they can be so harsh.
Right.
So we don't recommend that people use dish detergents, but look for an insecticidal soap, and a soap is different than a detergent, and it's not going to hurt your plants, but you do have to still be careful with them.
Yeah, I've used that Safer brand soap before, and that seems to work pretty good on soft-bodied insects and things like that.
Yeah, and then there's other things out there, microbial products.
Okay.
Like beneficial bacterias. um, Bacillus thuringiensis, and we always just refer to it as BT.
Yeah.
And it's a naturally occurring bacteria. There's a lot of different strains of it, and they are targeted to different kinds of organisms. Like for mosquito larvae, there's the mosquito dunks that you can get, and you can even put them in bird baths because that bacteria is only going to target mosquito larvae that's living in still water, and I think
That's
it also
pretty cool.
targets black fly larvae.
Very cool.
So, you know, take a look out there, you know, in the market for that. And hey, thank
Evan's
you, Evan.
demonstrating some mosquito dunks for us there, but
Yes. So there's a lot more that's coming on the market that with microbials that are just very selective. So they're not going to just kill everything. They're only going to target your particular pest. And no matter what the product is, if it says it's natural, it's organic, whatever, it's still an insecticide, and you need to read that label. There's a lot of really good information on that label, and about protecting yourself, about protecting your environment, your pets, our waters. So be sure to read that label. There's great information there.
yeah, that's true. I remember I was working at a nursery once, and we were applying an organic pesticide, which it is an organic. It's called Scythe or X. I can't remember. It was one of those burn agents. You know, it's like a vinegar acid thing. It burns weeds. Anyway, that sucker had a warning label on it. It was, you know, so even though it was considered an organic pesticide, it still, you know, is designed to kill. So it can be hazardous. So
yeah, there's a lot of organic stuff out there that can kill you, definitely harm you. So just because it says organic doesn't mean it's safe for everything. I mean, it's a pesticide, so you need to be careful with that.
She's so right about that, because there's a fungicide product that's used a lot on fruit trees called lime sulfur. By Organic Lime Sulfur out of California. Stuff comes with a danger label because when you mix it, if it gets in your eyes, you can go blind because it burns and it can burn your skin off. Mix it down and dilute it, it's fine and it's safe, but that's why it carries that danger label.
Gotcha. So while there are good products out there, organics, just be careful.
Organic means derived from a natural source, not necessarily, you know, I always say you might call rattlesnake poison organic because it's derived from a natural source, but I wouldn't want it anywhere near me.
Yeah. There's a lot of good organics out there. A lot of them are fairly soft and easy on folks, and Mary outlined a bunch of them for you there. So I think that listener has a pretty good selection there. Just keep in mind some of those pointers from our panelists. Thanks, Mary. That was really, really good. Beth, Mary is right. All roads lead back to citrus. So Zoom question. Something has taken 2 vertical bites of my small pumpkin orange tree. I think that's a variety of tangerine, similar to Satsuma. Don't quote me on that. Do squirrel or rabbits do this to citrus? So 2 vertical bites. What could have done that?
Yeah, this is a hybrid of a citrus.
Okay.
It's interesting with animal damage. You know, some of the animal damage is very distinctive. A lot of times with rabbit damage, that's going to be something that they can reach. And we often see with rabbit damage a really nice 45-degree angle cut on a stem.
Okay.
That's pretty distinctive. So a lot of your perennials or young plants that are still low to the ground, just like that. And so they'll make
for us geometrically challenged people.
Yeah, they'll make a nice clean cut. Squirrels will often pull bark from trees and strip bark. We see that a lot of times on pecan trees. And we see it often when there are drought conditions, the reason they're stripping that bark on the tree. So that could be it. If you've had some squirrels maybe stripping down, you know, the description that you've given, it would really be awesome if we had a photo to go with it.
It's
That's
true.
what we love. So that's kind of where we are right now, just based on that description. If anyone else has something to throw in, we've added a little bit of information from one of our arboretums just that describes some of the animal damage. So you can kind of read through there and get some ideas of of what that looks like and maybe pinpoint that. But
Okay.
wherever you are, send us a picture to your
Yeah.
local office, and that'll give us a better idea, because sometimes what I'm visualizing is not what you're seeing.
Yep.
And it may be something totally different, like a sapsucker or, some other animal out there that's doing this.
Hard to tell from a description, but I think you did a pretty good job there on some possible options. And check out that link in the chat from the Morton Arboretum for some more information on that. And as always, send a picture to us. So good info there, Beth. Mary, we're going to come back to you. This is not about citrus, and I don't want to hear anything about citrus in this question. So
Okay.
this is a Zoom question. What ate my green beans last spring? I'm going to assume that it wasn't their neighbors and was an insect or an animal pest. So tell us about that.
Well, green beans are delicious, and
They are.
I think every creature wants to feed on
Right.
green beans.
Except my brother.
So yeah, you sure it's not your neighbor? Could be.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to look for evidence of what it could be. So let's say if it's rabbits or deer, and we always have a problem with deer in my neighborhood. It's just going to be gone, completely eaten. So I'm not sure, if that's what you're seeing. Deer can be kind of hard to control. This year, for our garden, I put up a motion activated sprinkler.
Oh, really?
It's pretty high impact too, and it just comes on at night, and it has a dedicated hose to it, and it works very well. One of my neighbors got too close to it on their side of the fence, and
Yeah.
it got them too. And it has worked really well. We haven't had any deer in the yard, and it's pretty environmentally friendly.
Yeah, some unusual tactic.
Yes,
It worked.
it worked. So some other ideas, if it is maybe insect damage, you can look to see what kind of damage it is. Is it like holes in the leaves? If it's holes in the leaves or in the beans, that's some kind of a chewing insect, an insect that chews to feed, like, it's mostly going to be your caterpillars,
Right.
and maybe some beetles, but probably some kind of caterpillars. If you see like stippling of the leaves or distortion of the leaves, or the leaves kind of turning silvery, you may be looking for a pest that's more of a piercing, sucking insect that's piercing, has a kind of a sharp mouth part, and it puts it down there into the plant, and is sucking out the juices out of the leaf or the fruit there. So
lots of options.
Yeah, there's a lot of options out there. So you need to kind of be a little bit of an investigator and take a look around and look for evidence. We are sharing in the chat insect management in the home garden, and it goes through a lot of the different pests that you can be on the lookout for. But just because you see an insect doesn't mean that it's eating something that you want in your garden. So it could be a beneficial insect. It could be a predator that is going to be helping you out. So be sure to be cognizant of what it is, and accurately identify those insects. If you have some, contact your local extension agent.
A picture would help again in this situation, for sure.
Yes, pictures are good.
So thanks, Mary. Evan, we're going to stay in the vegetable garden here with a Zoom question. Does solarization, and I'll let you give a quick explanation on what that is, affect the germination and growth of future crops?
So solarization is a method of pest control where you take a sheet of clear plastic, put it over the area to be treated during the heat of the summer. You have to kind of weigh down the edges so no air is going to escape. And it acts as kind of a greenhouse where it traps the solar radiation, or the solar radiation comes in, it's converted to heat when it hits the ground, and then it traps all that heat underneath, and it can get to some pretty high temperatures. And if you do it right, the temperatures get high enough that it cooks absolutely everything in the first few inches of soil and kills it all. So
Weeds, nematodes, everything.
weeds, nematodes, fungi, whatever's in the soil is pretty much going to die.
Okay.
You're basically just cooking it. That can have an effect on the life in the soil, and we do need beneficial organisms in the soil to help keep it healthy and the plants thriving. However, the beneficial fungi and bacteria and insects, they tend to recolonize an area pretty quickly. Unless you're doing a incredible amount of space, you're going to have a lot of area along the edges for those beneficial organisms to come back in from. So it's not gonna make that much of a difference in the long run. You may see a bit of a difference in a very short term, but they're going to recolonize pretty quickly, and it's probably going to do more good than harm if you're trying to control something that you need solarization for, like nematodes or weeds. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Gotcha. So definitely not going to affect germination or anything, and probably is not going to negatively affect growth. So just going to roast the bad guys. Gotcha. Good deal. Beth, do you know of a quick test ID what is chewing this person's ornamental plants, camellias, roses, and newly planted holly trees? What would you suggest to this person? You are muted, Beth. Sorry about that.
I've got several things going on. Sorry.
There you go. Talk away.
Mary gave a good description to begin with on the green beans. So, I was looking for some kind of publication that kind of went through all these chewing descriptions, and it's kind of piecemealed all over. So I found one out of our friends at Texas A&M that kind of gives you a good start. So what we're looking for when we kind of see the patterns of insects, you can kind of go through several different ones. The one we all know are defoliators, and that just kind of means foliage is gone. And a lot of caterpillars are really good defoliators. So that's kind of what you're looking for. The easiest one people to recognize are called miners. And this could be a caterpillar or a fly that will actually tunnel through the leaves and they're chewing and leave you a nice pattern there. So that one's really easy to ID. Some of the ones that are a little more difficult are our window feeders, meaning they've kind of left one side of the surface, but they've eaten the other. And so you can kind of see through that leaf.
Gotcha.
We have beetles that can do that. We have some young caterpillars that can do that, some sawflies. We have skeletonizers, meaning a lot of caterpillars will kind of eat but leave the veins on the leaf. So that's a lot of times a caterpillar damage. And then one of the ones we have are flea beetles, which can be very destructive to a lot of things. And they start by eating a little pit in the leaf. So you have a little sunken area, these small circles, and then they eat a hole away. So there's lots of different pests. On camellias, I've noticed there's a little weevil that will get on there and make a little hole in the leaf. So that may be what the person's seen. But also realize on roses, we do have some beneficial bees that will actually take the edges and the margins out of those roses to go build their home.
Really?
And so realize that not everything, like Mary said again, is harmful, and make sure you ID it. So if you're really unsure, send us a picture. Look for frass, which is the poop. That's always an indication that something's been there too, and that can help us. But I wish we had a real definitive guide on here's all the chewing damage and exactly what it goes to, but we just kind of have to practice and learn some of these through experience.
That's good. Got to learn the hard way sometimes. And again, folks, send us a picture. We'll accept pictures also. So that's good. Matt, Matt or Watt, I planted a pair of tomatillos by my tomatoes. So we're getting a little spicy here. The leaves curled early, but continued growing, but not fruiting. So we got some leaf curl. The plants kept growing, but they didn't make any fruit. The other tomatoes did okay, but these tomatillos never made any fruit. What gives on this one?
Great. I love tomatillo is very underutilized as a vegetable around here, but it's very good vegetable. It's actually not spicy unless someone puts peppers with it. So
There you go.
a common misconception about the tomatillo, but it's actually native to the United States, but also some of the varieties come from Mexico.
Okay.
Also known as the ground cherry. So a lot of people don't know that they're the same thing. But okay, rolling. I put a really good link about tomatillas, but if you're getting the leaf rolling, the situation could be a heat stress, that the leaves are curling because of the heat, and sometimes tomatillos might not be as heat resistant as your tomatoes, because people have been breeding tomatoes for heat resistance, but tomatillos are generally not bred very much. There's just a lot of heirloom type varieties that are grown, but it's not been intensively bred like tomatoes for heat resistant traits. And
Okay.
also keep in mind that this year we've had a very high UV content in the sun, where I've seen damage on a large variety of different plants from UV light.
Interesting.
And it's been in the news that the UV rays have been extra bright this year, extra intense. And the other thing, it could be aphids or any other type of feeding insect like a thrips or mealybug. They could be feeding on the undersides of the leaves, which will cause the leaf to roll. So check the undersides of the leaves as well.
It's interesting that the tomatoes next to them did pretty good, but the tomatillos didn't. That's
It depends.
a conundrum.
Could be that the aphids, if it's aphids or insects, that they prefer the tomatillo.
Could be.
Or it could
It's not as widely grown, so I guess there's not as much known about the pest.
right, and it could be a heat issue. So,
Okay. So yeah, are tomatillos like tomatoes and they quit setting fruit when the temperatures get above a certain point?
I would say, you know what, that's a question I don't know the answer to, but
Okay.
it says that it may, because they're in the same family.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's some ideas for you. Again, call your local county extension office. There may be somebody there that's had a little bit more personal experience with tomatillos than some.
Oh, they're great. Yeah, Matt Lawler gave a really good comment. Just fry them like you'd fry green tomatoes.
Really? Okay.
Make a sauce for enchiladas or salsa, but if you don't like the whole Mexican food thing, you can fry them up like a green tomato. Mm-hmm.
Fried green tomatillos.
Oh yeah, it's actually a fruit that's been in cooking in the South for generations, but the younger people don't really know much about it.
Okay. Well, maybe they'll get reintroduced from here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Evan, we're going to stay with vegetable plants here. We've got a listener who wants to know about some good natural deterrents for squash vine borers to successfully grow summer squash. Squash vine borers are awful. So tell us what.
Yeah, and I don't know of any deterrents, unfortunately.
Okay.
The squash vine borer is a moth that lays its eggs on the base of the stem of the squash plant, and then the larvae burrows into the stem and has itself a little feast. That's its whole job in life, is to burrow into a squash plant. I don't know that there's much that's going to deter it from doing that.
Yeah.
There is a way to prevent it from getting on the squash plant in the first place.
Really?
That would be floating row cover or row cover fabric. I've used that before. You can buy it online at usually, any garden supply catalog, that sort of thing. I haven't seen it too much in local stores, but who knows, they may have some. It's a spun fabric that lets light and water through, and you drape it kind of over the, you can use a hoop, or you can just drape it over the plants when you plant them, and then take it off once the flowers start blooming, so that the pollinators can get to it. And that should exclude the moths from getting to the plant while they're laying their eggs. you may still see one or two, but it can cut down the population quite a bit.
Okay.
The organic option is if you do have them and you need to get rid of them, insecticides aren't going to be much help because the larvae is protected inside the stem.
It's an insidious little creature.
It is. You can take a knife and make a vertical cut on the stem and try and dig out the larvae, which has the benefits of being gross, difficult, and potentially harmful to the plant. So
Okay.
mileage may vary on that one, but it is an organic option for controlling the things if you have them in your plant.
High
And
risk surgery.
might do less damage in the long run than leaving the larvae alone.
Okay.
I noticed somebody else in the question and answer section asked about squash worms. If you're referring to the same thing, BT is not going to, or it being a moth, yeah, it might actually help if the BT is eaten by the larvae itself. It is going to be very difficult to get the BT to where the squash
Right.
is feeding. So again, your mileage may vary. That's unfortunately the best organic option I have for you is either exclusion via row cover or picking it out by hand.
Yeah, squash vine borer is probably the hardest thing to control, and especially in an organic or more natural situation.
Yeah, it's a pretty good off, but I don't want to see it.
The only thing that I've done that's had any effect is to get my seeds out really early and just grow your squash, harvest it, enjoy it, and then quit when the vine borers get bad. So I made the mistake this summer. I was determined to grow some pumpkins, and I just lost a pumpkin vine to a squash vine borer. So they're still out and about, even in August. Who knew? So.
Hey, Daniel, Evan, even on squash, you may be able to wrap the exposed portions of the stem below where all the leaves emerge, because they don't like to lay their eggs so much in with the leaves. They tend to layer on bare sections of the stem.
Yeah.
And again, that would be excluding the moth physically from getting to the plant. So if you have some way of doing that, whether it's just the base of the stem or the whole plant.
All right. Thanks, Evan. That's tough. So, Beth, we've got a question about some soil. Our soil is literally hard-packed sand. So what can we do to improve it? So maybe similar to what Matthew talked about earlier.
It is. Both Matt and Evan gave you some good advice on clay soils, but really even sand. I live in Marys County. You know, she's never made a field visit to me, though.
Wow.
I need her help.
Wow, Mary.
I have just sand, and it just takes time. Remember, soil improvement is not quick, but like Matt suggested, organic matter is extremely important. And like Evan mentioned, you have to incorporate this in. We can't just throw it out. It has to be incorporated in. It has to be continual to improve that. You can do mulches on top that are going to break down and improve that environment. What you need to be careful of, though, is some of your sources of organic matter. You know, if you're using lots of manures, those could be higher in salt content that could be detrimental to some plants over time. You could have some lime mixed in with some of this that may not be good for your acid-loving plants like azaleas and camellias. So not all amendments are the same. So, you know, kind of do some research. If you have questions about you're getting ready to go get a load of manure for somewhere, you may talk to us first. But the key is it's going to take a lot of time, but you can improve your soil over time with that amendments and organic matter and mulches.
Yeah, we see this a lot in these new construction where there's been all this construction on, you know, the vehicles driving over it. And so pretty common issue. And that's good suggestions there, Beth. We got 4 more questions. I know we're running at 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and knock these last 4 out for y'all. So if you want to stick with us for 5 or 10 more minutes, we'll be done and get all your questions answered. We're going to throw this to Matt Orwatt. Matt, so this is a question about ponderosa lemon. What kind of care for a container grown ponderosa lemon to limit its size? So I assume these people want to grow this plant in a container and don't want it to necessarily outgrow the container. Is there anything they can do?
Yes, I thought this was a very good question because it touches on several different issues. So the first part of the answer, I would say, if you don't want to fight nature, find your Ponderosa lemon budded onto a dwarfing rootstock, such as flying dragon. So
Okay.
that a little bit of work to try to find that special
That's a
variety
good idea.
Rosa lemon on flying dragon, but I'm sure it probably exists somewhere. So you have to make some inquiries and see if you can get it on the dwarfing rootstock, which will help you keep it smaller. Okay. And the second part of it is if you can find it on the dwarfing rootstock, it'll make a much better dwarf because it'll grow more horizontally. And seriously, that would be what I do. But you'd still have to manage it. It's a thing in Europe that people use grow citrus in terracotta pots. And the reason I say terracotta is that the pots themselves will breathe.
Okay.
Buy a fake terracotta, like a plastic or a foam, even though it looks like terracotta, because it won't breathe. But a plant that's been reduced in size with the root system appreciates that ability for the root system to breathe, and they will perform a lot better for you, okay? I would say get the plant started off in a 5-gallon container, but then in a couple years, bump it to a 10-gallon terracotta pot. And when you grow it, make sure it has plenty of slow release fertilizer and micronutrients, because that root system is very limited to that pot. And make sure, you don't want to over fertilize with nitrogen, get it all green and growing like crazy, but you also don't want it to be deficient. So you have to manage your nutrients very carefully.
Yeah.
Slow release and spoon feeding at little amounts at a time. In addition, more information that I put in here about the spoon feeding the nutrients, but also I put a publication in here, but it's not showing up. Maybe Matt Lawler or some of the other people can find it, because I think my there it is. Okay, if you click on it, you'll need to prune it selectively and prune the roots to match the top cut. So it's almost treating it like a bonsai.
Gotcha.
To prune aesthetically, not just whack it back and cut it. You need to prune aesthetically to make it beautiful, but also to prune it selectively. And then when you do that, you lift the plant out every few years and prune the roots to match that pruning you've done, okay? That helps produce more feeder roots and keeps the woody roots from dominating the pot. And then you also need to replace some of that loose growing media every few years to help it have some fresh media as well. Use a professional growers mix that's peat perlite based. And there's a really wonderful publication from the University of Maryland that talks about growing citrus in containers.
I think we got that posted in the chat there.
And it's excellent. It gives a great discussion on how to grow citrus in containers. So I would recommend checking out that publication.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
I've actually have a Ponderosa lemon. That's the one. It's got this humongous fruit that's like almost a basketball size. And the trees do get really big. So I can see where you would want to limit the size. A reminder for those of you who have to get out of here a little early, please take our survey. We've posted there in the chat. We'd greatly appreciate it, and it will give us some good information on where to go in our next Guarding the Panhandle live sessions. All right, Beth, as we wrap up over these next couple of questions, we've had this question before, but it seems to be a popular one. Are red passion flowers toxic to butterflies?
Yeah, the reason I actually put this back in because we didn't really have a great response last time. It's not something that we knew a lot about. So I did some research and found out that, a lot of plants in the Passiflora family actually have a host of chemicals in them that can kind of deter insects from eating them. We don't eat leaves of the passion vine. We don't eat unripe fruit. We don't eat the rind. Because that can cause some issues with us. However, the red ones, there's kind of some information going around. It's toxic to butterflies. I did not find that conclusively listed from some of our research institutions. They did say some of the butterflies, especially the Gulf fritillary, don't tend to like the red as much, but they didn't list that it was especially toxic to them. It just seems like they're not going to go to that one as much. One of the reds that's actually in Central and South America is host to another butterfly. So that butterfly's adapted just fine to whatever chemicals are in that. And we have that butterfly here now, the zebra longwing. So we may see that eating some of our red passion vine we have. So not
Okay.
conclusive that it's a toxic to the butterflies, although there are some chemicals in it that can prevent some insect feeding.
Gotcha. I mean, just anecdotally, you see the blue or the purple, more common passion vine more, and there do seem to be lots of butterflies that really enjoy that. I'm not as familiar with the red, so that's good information. Thank you for that. Reaching deep and getting that hard to find information there. Thanks, Beth. We can count on you. Evan, second to last question. This is just sort of the question for the ages for Florida vegetable gardeners. How do you grow vegetables in the heat?
Number one is manage your expectations, because if you are expecting a great big bountiful garden, you can have it, but it's going to be limited in the scope of what you are actually harvesting from it. There are a lot of plants that just can't handle the heat, and there are a few that can. So choose the correct plant is the main thing that you can do to get vegetables in the heat. Things like okra, bell peppers, some tomatoes, especially the cherry varieties, tend to do better no matter what you're doing. You've got sweet potatoes. Some of the herbs that you can grow in your garden do okay in the heat. Cow peas, if you're into that, all those things can do well in the heat. But if you're trying to grow things like broccoli or any of the cool season crops, it's just not going to happen. They're going to bolt right away, and you're going to have not much fun. So really manage your expectations. For some of these things, you can use shade cloth to cut down on some of the sunlight they're getting. Again, plants like full sun, or a lot of our crop plants like full sun, so that may or may not work. Heavy watering can help to cool down the soil, but again, it has to be something that can tolerate that, and you got to be able to tolerate your water bill as well. So mainly I'd say choose the right plants.
I agree. If it's not eggplant, okra, and peppers in the summer and sweet potatoes, I'm not doing it. I've got some memories of picking peas in the summer from my childhood, so I'm going to pass on the cow peas. So I appreciate that, though. We're going to stay with you for our last question here. What is the best way to store garlic for the longest time and it still be good? So how do you store garlic?
And I'm assuming you're harvesting garlic from the garden.
We're going to assume that.
In any case, really put it in a mesh bag or keep it in a well-aerated place in the cool around 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit in the dark. And you want the humidity to be moderate. So that can be tough, especially when the winter, when you've got the heat running in the house. That can cut down the humidity a lot. You can put it in the crisper drawer in your
the fridge,
but if you take it out and leave it sitting around for a few days, it's going to sprout. Use it right away if you do that.
Okay.
There are other options for storing it, like freezing. You can chop it up in the food processor and put it in an ice cube tray and affect the flavor a little bit, but that'll store pretty much indefinitely. You can dry it, dehydrate it. Again, might affect the flavor, but that stores almost indefinitely. I've got a document from UGA that goes into a little bit of that. I also found a good article from Better Housekeeping, or whatever the magazine is. So you can find some of that information online. But I would say really a cool dry, or a cool semi-humid place, not dry, but
yeah, I like the paper grocery bags seem to work pretty good for garden storage. So yeah, that would make sense. Awesome. So we've worked through our questions that we got from you folks. I really appreciate them. Those were really good. We've had enjoyed talking with our panelists today. Thank you to Evan, Mary, Beth, and Matt. And just wanted to give a shout out to our backstage folks, Mark Tansig, Matt Lawler, and our special guest today, John Wells, our district IT professional, as Julie McConnell is out hopefully having a great time on vacation. So with that, we're going to invite you to come back with us for Gardening with Pollinators. Again, our special guest, Extension Specialist, Dr. Gary Knox. That'll be on August the 20th, a couple of weeks from now. And then after that, on September the 10th, for Fruiting Trees and Shrubs, please remember to take our survey, give us some good information, allow us to keep doing what we're doing for you, and we'll greatly appreciate that. And I hope that all of you have a great afternoon, a good weekend, stay cool out there, and enjoy what's left of our warm season gardening, and we'll start getting ready for the cool season here shortly. So y'all all have a great afternoon, and we'll see you right here next time. Thank you.